Frankenstein, Dracula, werewolves, phantoms, zombies, gorgons, mad scientists, abominable snowmen. These are the monsters that they have created. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Ingrid Pitt, Veronica Carson, Oliver Reed, Madeline Smith, Barbara Shelley, Michael Gow, Hazel Court, Bartine Beswick. These are the people that faced the horrors. Jimmy Sangster, Terrence Fisher, Michael Carreras, Peter Sasty, John Elder, Evan Jones, Anthony Hines. These are the people who created the horrors behind Hammer Studios. Welcome to Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors, your gateway into classic horror cinema, brought to you by Broken Lighthouse Pictures and Something Wicked Entertainment. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Hammer Studio Horror, the podcast. This is our new spin-off podcast from our original show, Conversations in Horror, and we are so happy to be bringing it to you every 2 weeks on our schedule. Well, the thing is, we decided that Hammer Studio Films needed their own little their little podcast so we can delve deep into their films, because their films were such a huge influence on the horror genre in general, and there are plenty of films for us to actually have a discussion and conversation about. So, like our other show, this show will also delve deep into one particular film each episode, where I, Kevin L. Powers, your host, will be with another esteemed young gentleman or lady to talk about each of the Hammer Studio films. Now, that being said, we're going to have a little fun with this show because a lot of us here are Hammer nuts. And some of us aren't so much nuts, but we're all great horror fans. So these episodes will be going to be a little bit more fun than what you might expect from our main show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kind of get into everything by first introducing my special guests for today. I have Dave Watkins and Thomas Tinnerello, who, if you have been listening to the main show, you already know their names. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Yeah, man. It's good to be here.
It's good to be alive and not undead.
So, this film that we are going to be discussing today is from the Curse of Frankenstein. What was it? The year 1957. See, I almost forgot again. I tried to remember the last episode on the last film, but these films are of the decade where we haven't really focused a lot on in our regular show, Conversation in Horror, which is why we want to make sure that we take a little bit more time with some of these films from the 50s and 60s, of which were the heyday of the Hammer Studio films. This being the first of their Frankenstein films, and their first film that was really audience-pleasing film that kind of kickstarted the Hammer Studio reign of horror.
I have a quick question, Kevin, because I don't know if you talked about this episode you did before. Hammer as a brand, I think in horror is pretty unique. I mean, it's either Universal Horror and Hammer, and that's pretty much, I mean, Blumhouse as a studio is a brand now, but that's pretty much it. I feel like Hammer is so synonymous with horror, but at the time when this movie was released, had they done like really successful horrors before that? I think there was like a Quatermass movie, right?
Yeah, I think there are two of them, but they did science fiction. They did
science fiction.
The
Unknown.
Yeah.
The thing about this is they did a lot of thrillers before they started doing this. So there's a lot of black and white thrillers that they did too, but they hadn't really focused on like horror until I think the original Quatermass was the TV show or TV miniseries that then they expanded into a movie, and then they become more successful than they actually thought they were ever going to be. So yeah.
And part of the thing, and ladies and gentlemen, part of the reason that makes that Hammer is so famous is that even here across the pond. And by the way, shout out to all of our UK listeners out there. We love you all, and we're doing this partially for you because you guys know this better than we do, all this Hammer stuff. God bless British horror. We pray that Hammer in its newest incarnation is just as successful as the old somehow, because they're still out there now.
They are.
And they got something new coming out soon. I can't remember what it is. But but anyway, what made them special and unique was that, remember, this came out in 1957. And to give you guys context, the last of the great Universal monsters, the creature from the Black Lagoon. Its, I think, last sequel, The Creature Walks Among Us, came out
1956.
the year before this.
Yeah.
So these movies came right when we needed them. This was because the Universal horror cycle was pretty much dead at this point. They were winding down, and from here on in the States, it's nothing but, rip up, just drive-in trash like I Was a Teenage Frankenstein and Werewolf and all that stuff. But across the pond, somebody at Hammer Studios had a brilliant idea. Hey, let's redo all the classic, Universal monsters that we can get the rights to, i.e., everything except for the Invisible Man, which weirdly I don't know why they didn't just do the H.G. Wells book, which was still public domain. I guess I don't know. They did everything except Invisible Man and Creature from the Black Lagoon because Universal owned the creature. Mm-hmm. But everything was public domain. I was like, why don't we just do that? But we'll do it with blood and boobs and color. That was the big innovation. Was these were the first Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman movies that were in color.
They were under. They did have the stipulation that they couldn't have anything from the Universal films in there. So they had to be real careful not to have Frankenstein look like he does in the movies. And
yeah, that's the thing about anybody who does the Frankenstein version at all is you can't have him look like the Boris Karloff Frankenstein. There's only one exception to that rule in the Hammer canon of Frankenstein movies, of which there are 7? Question mark?
Yeah, 7. Yeah, there are 7 of them. Yes,
7. We had this debate earlier as to how many there are, but yeah, there is one Hammer. I think it's Evil of Frankenstein, where they were able to strike some kind of deal with Universal where they could make a monster that did vaguely resemble the Karloff version. And it's one of the better designs, but we'll get into the various designs and why there were multiple creatures and stuff like that later. But so
I think they benefited though from not able to use the stuff from the other ones. They had to be creative, and so everything you see is almost in a lot of ways new. Because they don't even really they use the characters' names, but the characters are a lot different than even the novel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. This we'll get into it, but like Curse of Frankenstein is, there's so little of it that has anything to do with Mary Shelley. Which, by the way, I think 2 days ago was Mary Shelley's 100th and something 200th birthday or something. So happy birthday! Happy birthday to the young lady who actually started all this mess. Hey. Oh, and also we're recording this mere months, maybe 2 months, 3 months before Guillermo del Toro brings us his Frankenstein in theaters briefly and on Netflix. So I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait.
Frankenstein is one of those creations that just keeps being remade over and over again by multiple different studios. So yeah, that's what happens when you have a property that's in the public domain. Anyone could pretty much make a version of it.
But this one's going to be pretty big. I think that the last big one was that 1994 one with Robert De Niro and Kenneth Branagh.
Oh yeah.
But before, I mean, after that, there's been other ones, but they haven't had the budget of that.
Oh, I think I Frankenstein probably had a bigger budget than Mary Shelley's Frankenstein did.
I don't count. I mean, I guess technically it's Frankenstein. I mean, it is an adaptation of closer to the actual novel, but that one I didn't even make it through that movie. The I Frankenstein movie.
I like that movie. It was fun.
I had a hard time with it for some reason, but I mean, there's other, like Van Helsing has Hell's Frankenstein, or
you also have Lisa Frankenstein. You have tons of them now because. No one wants to remake, and this goes for Dracula too, and even the Mummy. No one wants to make the original stories anymore because so many people have already made them. So they want to take the concept and kind of modernize it, and that's essentially what Hammer did too. They took the concept and made it more accessible and more modern for the 50s audience, as opposed to what Universal did with their films.
Oh yeah, they made it accessible, but they also pushed the envelope. In every decade in terms of violence and gore and what you could show in terms of sexuality. Like in the first few of these films, you'll have lots of girls in corsets and heaving bosoms And it's not until like the late 60s and the 70s then you finally get films like The Vampire Lovers and The Twins of Evil and things like that, where you actually do get to see some,
It's
some stuff.
softcore, some stuff going on
Of
there.
course.
Yeah.
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 But
So there's like lesbian vampire films, those three.
we're kind of graced with the great fact that for most of this franchise, Peter Cushing was in a lot of them, if not most of them. I think what we say
All but one.
all but one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I say all but one. And because he's the main character in the movie. This franchise, unlike, let's say Dracula, isn't really about the monster. It's not really about the Frankenstein's monster. It's really about Frankenstein, which is actually one of the great things that is different in also other Frankenstein
Yeah.
movies as well.
Because Frankenstein is the monster, technically.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is the one franchise of Frankenstein. It may even be like one of the only Frankenstein movies that understands that basic idea that the novel was about, that the monster is not the monster. The monster is Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So this is a franchise that, unlike the Universal franchise and other horror things where you have to bring back the same monster over and over and over again. This time, instead, no, it's the same Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Almost always played by Peter Cushing, and he makes a different monster every single movie.
Yeah.
Getting into Curse of Frankenstein, by the way, that's one of the things I loved about the movie is the fact that Peter Cushing is playing more or less the main villain. I mean, not only is he Baron Frankenstein, or he's Doctor? I forget.
Yeah, Baron.
He is.
Baron.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He is. This is interesting too, because it's like this is probably one of the only Frankenstein versions that I know of where Frankenstein is not a doctor. This man did not go to medical school. If anything, he homeschooled himself with this other guy who's named Paul. And what's funny is that the Hammer films always have somebody named Paul, and they're always a good guy. There's always a Paul, especially in the Dracula movies. They just pop up it's like he's an eternal Gilgamesh type hero who keeps getting reincarnated through each successive horror Hammer movie. I don't know why they were obsessed with Paul. My theory is that some executive at Hammer was a huge Beatles fan and was obsessed with Paul McCartney. But, that's just my pet theory.
I think, Paul in this one is kind of a hero, but he's also kind of not a hero in a way.
And he's barely in the movie, too. This is an anti-hero story.
I thought he was in it a pretty good bit, really.
Pretty good
I would. I mean, even though he's not second billed, I think he's like third or fourth billed, but he should have been second billed for his screen time.
I mean, in theory, we see him first before we ever really, because we have to go through the scenes where Victor Frankenstein is young and he hires Paul at first. So we see.
Oh no! But with all due respect, Kevin, that's not the first thing we see.
No.
The prison. The prison is
the prison. But
we got a how we got here scene at the beginning. Flashes back through the rest of the film.
Scene,
but we go through we go through a stretch where we actually see the Victor as he's growing up and being influenced by what Paul does, and then they're both influencing each other because they're both kind of kindred spirits at first.
What's funny when it first shows Frankenstein, he's really young. He's probably like, what do you think, 14 or 15 or something like that?
Well, he's got to be because like back in those days, once you turned 13, you were technically considered an adult. So like because he lost his father when he was pretty much born, he lost his mother right around when he was like 14 or 15, which, by the way, that whole thing, if this were written today, that whole thing of him losing his mother at such a young age would be a clear one-to-one psychological like origin story for why he wants to create life. It's this idea like he can't have a mother, so he's going to like be a mother, basically, like, because that's what Frankenstein does, is he creates life without a mother. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I want to go back a little bit too, because I think there's some interesting things about the prologue, the beginning, the wraparound, as it were, for this thing. First of all, like this movie opens with a title scrawl that gives us something like a Star Wars type thing, which says more than 100 years ago in a village in Switzerland. So we're very much key to this is Switzerland. It's not England. It's not Germany. It's Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
They lived a man whose strange experiments with the dead have since become legend. The legend of ... And then it goes to the title, The Curse of Frankenstein. So my first issue with this is that Curse of Frankenstein should not have been the title. They should have called it The Legend of Frankenstein, if anything, because there is no curse in this movie. There's no gypsy. There's no gypsy that says you shall be cursed with, making monsters and having sex with women. You will, or you will be. There's no family curse because his dad was an apothecary or something. All those things those two things would have made sense. But no, they just put the word curse on there because it sounded horror-ish.
Yeah, they picked it out of a hat, maybe. I don't know, but yeah,
all the other titles in the series make somewhat sense. Like Revenge of Frankenstein, he's getting revenge. Frankenstein created woman, he creates a woman. Monster from Hell, I mean, that's debatable whether the monster comes from hell. It certainly looks like it does. But yeah, Frankenstein must be destroyed certainly by movie 5, yes. But no, this title makes zero sense. So because there is no curse. We should also, since we're talking about the credits, we should probably brief shout out to the creators of this movie, who are going to be popping up again and again in this series. You got our writer, Jimmy Sangster. This guy wrote a bunch of other Hammer movies. He was probably one of the most prolific screenwriters in Hammer's retinue. I don't have his oeuvre popped up right at the moment, but just Google him, you'll find him. Terence Fisher, my goodness, this guy directed a ton of horror movies in England at the time. And if you saw Terence Fisher and Jimmy Sangster in the credits to a British horror movie that you were watching in that day and age, mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, you are assured of a good time. So, but I do think this also is probably the only Frankenstein version of the story that starts off in prison with Frankenstein relaying the story to a priest. Not because he's trying to confess. He clearly has no remorse about what he did. And we'll see why after a while. But he just says, somebody has to know. And he wants somebody desperately to believe him. And that's how we go from there to there. We haven't seen anything horrifying quite happen yet. There's no, opening image to kind of arrest us and grab us. We just kind of go from there and have a little, When
he talks to the priest, he does seem like he wants to talk himself out of getting executed.
Yes.
But then if he really tells him the story that's told, though, he does confess to a lot of crimes. So it's not like it would have worked. And no. I feel like he's not telling him the true story anyway.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Dave, because there's several things, especially when we get to the end, there's several things that make me think that, and I think this is intentional, that Frankenstein may be an unreliable narrator.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he'd almost have to be, but it's not that it gets him out of it. But he might be so. He does seem really crazed at that point and delusional. He might be so delusional that him telling him that the other stuff that he did, it all had some kind of merit, and he had to do it in order to, because his obsession with his experiment and making the experiments happen.
Right, and it's
probably rationalize that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, this device is actually in keeping with Mary Shelley's book. Yeah, because the book does begin in the Arctic with some crew finding Frankenstein on the ice and the monster off in the distance, and Frankenstein is dying, and he is telling the crew all his backstory of how he got there. So that does track with the book. Yeah, and he does create a monster, and that is where the similarities with the book pretty much end.
Yeah, right.
Well, and you got to keep in mind that with this film and the uncertainty of the horror genre at this point in Hammer Studios era, they limited the locations to very few in this film, whereas the book itself has a lot of different locations and a lot more characters.
That's right, Kevin. They pretty much stay in the mansion for a huge chunk of this movie.
Yeah. The scenes that are outside of the mansion are very few and far in between. And even like when Frankenstein goes to get what's he going to get? The eyes. It's a very short scene. That he just leaves, goes gets them, and then comes back. And You know, and from and if you've read, there's tons of books out there. Everyone who's listening to this, there's tons of books out there about Hammer films, and there'll be tons of stories about why they did certain things and why they didn't do certain things for their movies, because these were not really expensive movies, to be honest with you.
Which probably explains the camera work. I don't know if you guys noticed this while you were watching it, but like I feel like in a modern audiences are much more spoiled or more accommodated because of the advent of television, and television being a tight shot medium. We're so used to close-ups and medium shots. Whereas this movie, especially the first like 30, 40 minutes of it, there's like only like 2 or 3 really good close-ups, which is absurd for a movie like in this day and age. There would be like 100 close-ups. But this movie is very, very sparing in its close-ups. So when they happen, you notice. And like the first big one I noticed was, and this, I do like the way they play on this trope. We know in every Frankenstein movie, Frankenstein's got to say the line. And the line, of course, which is, "It's alive." And this time he says it way earlier than we expect it. It's when his first experiment with Paul, his tutor, who now he's grown up, and they have like this. I wasn't sure that it was a puppy. I thought it was just some kind of animal that they'd stitched together, like a mutant creature thing. That would have been interesting, but no, it's in a tank of water, and they're shocking it. But like it's still kind of a wide shot. And then like they drain the thing, and then he's got this huge like Victorian stethoscope, and he puts it to the thing's body, and then close up on Peter Cushing's big old cadaverous face, and then he says, "It's alive."
Yeah.
And this is probably I think, ladies and gentlemen, the one horror movie I've ever seen where not only do they not kill a dog, the dog's already dead. When the movie starts, they bring him back to life.
Yeah.
So they undead a dog in this movie. So don't worry, animal lovers.
Yeah, but then the lighting is really cool though. Even though you got like the wider shots, but it is almost lit for black and white, even though it's color, and there's a lot of shadow depth and things of that nature.
Yes, that's a good point, because I think that color was still kind of a novelty to British cinematographers. They were still trying to figure out how it worked.
But there is a lot of depth to it. The more films. What's the name of that cinematography of this?
I forgot.
Jack Asher.
Asher.
Which he did a lot of them. He did like the horror of Dracula and the Mummy. But if you see the lighting, he gets darker with it, especially in the faces. And this one, the faces are pretty well lit. But as he goes forward, he gets more shadow on the faces and things of that nature that we're used to seeing now in horror films. This one may look a little more well lit, just because it is kind of experimenting with that concept.
I also see this as more of a gothic movie. So see a lot of that playing more towards that than a straightforward horror film, because and you're right, this was one of their earlier films, and as Hammer finds their way with horror, some of the later films look amazing compared to what this film looked like. Even some of the later Frankenstein movies themselves look amazing in terms of the cinematography and the way it's lit.
I still think this one looks really good. If you look at any individual frame, it's almost like a work of art, the way that things are positioned and the way that they're lit. And that's sometimes obviously they want to live on that shot because it's cheaper, but maybe they're living on it because of how much work they put into the whole shot.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I agree with you on that one, Dave, because when you're watching these films, and unlike modern day filmmaking, when you go in for so many close-ups, you can fine tune the lighting to like an infinitesimal amount. Back then, they lit these bigger sets and tried to, they didn't go in for the close-ups. So they did a lot of wide shots, they did a lot of medium shots, and they have to light the whole set. And so a lot of these shots are very lush, is the word I'm looking for, especially for this film as compared to Dracula, or Horror of Dracula, for the people outside the UK.
Well, it was Dracula in the UK. It was Horror of Dracula in the United States.
Well, for people who's not in the United States.
Now that's a title that makes sense. The Horror of Dracula. That makes sense, because there is horror in that Dracula movie.
Yeah.
And Christopher Lee has lines in that one.
But
Yeah, he has 10 lines
yeah, he has
actually.
10 lines.
10 lines.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that many, but yeah. But when you're watching these films, because they're more of a gothic, and they're not gothic romance films. They may later on,
Yeah, the gothic horror. Yeah.
yeah, gothic horror.
Yeah. Sure.
They have those elements where they have these very lush sets. The sets, like we were commenting on the horror of Dracula, the way the sets look and all that type of thing. They flow from this one, even though it's always almost like I don't even know how much of it takes place in his lab, but a huge chunk of this film
Yeah.
takes place in his lab. But that lab is not small.
Yeah.
That
You know
lab,
that yeah, that lab though, I thought it was the whole movie until near the end. I thought it was downstairs, but apparently it's upstairs.
Oh,
upstairs.
So,
yeah,
yeah,
you're
yeah, it's
right.
like what?
Yeah, I thought so too. But yeah, you're right, because spoilers, they do go from the lab
Outside
to the roof,
the roof.
Yeah, yeah.
but then they go higher up on the roof because the monster has to fall through a window.
Yeah, it's pretty cool
So the
sequence.
geography of this
Yeah.
house is a
Yeah.
little wonky.
Yeah, I mean it's weird though. Yeah, I know. I noticed it the first time because he actually there's a scene near the end where he actually goes up the stairs to go to the lab, and I'm like, I thought, why is he going upstairs? The lab's in the basement, you know. But
I think maybe my headcanon is that it has to be there because that's where he's getting the lightning power from the sky.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't know. Some reason the way that it looks always it's so big too. I always figured it was just like the basement of the house.
Yeah. I mean that second floor is huge. The
Yeah,
lab is huge. Like
Gigantic.
but it looks amazing because you'll be in this one little spot and then Frankenstein will dip into another spot and then there's another whole room off of that spot where
yeah,
where he hides the creature when everyone thinks the creature's dead. And I'm like,
that room is especially important because we were first introduced to it, and I was not expecting this because I had not seen this in any other Frankenstein version. This movie answers the question of, okay, what does Frankenstein do with all his spare parts?
oh yeah,
How does he not get arrested by having like hordes of like stock rooms full of dead bodies, kind of like how Udo Kerr's Frankenstein did in Flesh for Frankenstein.
yeah,
So this movie answers that question in a very simple visual way. When you see him right after they've resurrected the puppy, and now I guess the puppy just lives with them. They which, by the way, I always wondered, did they kill the puppy in the first place in order to bring him back to life? I don't know. But anyway, he goes and he decides Frankenstein is just like, Paul's like overjoyed. We can bring back to life with this method we've made. And he's like, yes, but you know what we could do? We could create life from scratch, whole cloth, with parts. And then Paul's like, "You're insane. This is fine. We can hang our laurels on this. We brought back a dead thing." He's like, "No, we got to do better. We got to do greater," which
yeah,
is insane. But if you think about it from a pure research perspective, that is kind of how pure research scientists work. They just see how much they could do, and then just keep going and going, and see what happens. But he takes they go on their quest to piece together the perfect man.
yeah.
Which is at the heart of every Frankenstein story. So it's got that beat. And just like in some others, he goes to get a hanged man off the noose. And he's like, I'm going to start with this body. The head's useless. It's been pecked by crows. So he cuts off the guy's head with like like he's carving the turkey at Thanksgiving with a small knife. And I like the way it's framed too, because it's a close up and like his knife is just out of frame.
Mm-hmm.
He's carving him just out of frame. And side note, hold on one second. I'm sorry, my wife's sending me stuff. Oh gosh. So anyway, what I was saying, so he's carving this guy's head. I'm like, what's he gonna do with the head? He takes it into this other room where there is this huge man-sized acid bath.
yeah.
It's a freaking vat of hydrochloric acid that he just dissolves anything in.
Just like it's sitting in there like a jacuzzi or some shit, you know.
It must stink to high heaven, but
It's and again, it's like that. It being in the basement would make so much more sense. But here it is, like above everybody, in a really heavy like tub thing of acid. Luckily, it doesn't go through it. Whatever it's in, I guess the acid doesn't go through rock or granite or whatever it's in, which I would assume would be a very heavy heavy thing.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm so used to seeing like people keep acid in like little beakers and shit. I don't actually know how that works.
Yeah, I would guess it's have to be concrete though. I don't but
That definitely no. The acid bath in this film looks like it's a concrete bath. It looks like it's
So,
made out of
you
concrete.
know,
can you imagine it? Like, I bet if it like went through the concrete and came through the ceiling, and it's,
Oh
yeah.
Jesus! We need to learn how the properties of acid
yeah.
when acid goes through.
You saw Breaking Bad when that happened, didn't you? And it come through the ceiling like that.
But for everyone listening, that's a very important scene, obviously, because you actually do see the window sill right above the acid bath. You see all that in that scene. I didn't notice it the first time I saw the movie, but I didn't notice it when I was rewatching it because I already knew what was going to happen. Because it plays a huge part in how the movie resolves its way in the last act. But out from that, so you have your main Frankenstein has his main lab, and then he has this one room with the acid bath, and then from there is another room that's got another lock that he could put stuff in, of which he later puts the creature to hide it from Paul. So you're seeing this huge work area and of the stuff that we normally see, and that makes up the majority of the location for this film.
So you mentioned earlier Gothic romance, and there is some Gothic romance in this film. It's a very dark
It
Gothic
is very
romance.
dark with just
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, he's got like a lover, Justine, but he's also his cousin that he's been paying for. Like her name's Elizabeth, like in the original book, but he's been paying for I guess her boarding and things like that all her life, and she's kind of betrothed to him,
Mhm.
and so she comes and she's a very proper person, but he's having a fling with the housekeeper, Justine, and and he seems pretty into it at first, but then she later on becomes very pushy, and she wants him to marry her, which in this society he doesn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, I was very surprised at that. I mean, there is a version of Dracula on sorry, not Dracula, Frankenstein on audiobook. And I think has like Arthur Darvill or somebody in it, but as Frankenstein. But anyway, it had the same thing, which is not in the novel at all. But there is the same kind of affair going on with also a chambermaid. So
Yeah.
I thought, that's a rather unique twist. And then I realized, oh, they did this too. They
Yeah.
did
What
it first. So
I
I
mean,
guess this is
yeah.
like the first one where like Frankenstein is just a right bastard. He's not just a psychopath. He's a freaking philandering just jerk. And
Well, it
but
seems like
I
he's
love the
kind
way
of yeah.
I love the way they reveal it too.
Yeah.
They have Hazel Court coming in, Kevin's crush, Hazel Court coming in as Elizabeth Frankenstein, because there's always an Elizabeth Frankenstein, who comes in, and she was introduced way earlier as a little kid, and I'm like, future wife. Um, and she comes in. She's like, "Oh, I'm so happy we're going to be married. We were arranged marriage years ago. Da, 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 da. And Victor's always wanted this." And then cut to him making out with the maid.
Yeah. He I don't know. I mean, I like the maid character though, but it's got a but one thing about that acid stuff and the fact it kind of plays into the ending, but like when she actually later dies, you would think he would have put her in that acid instead of what she it's kind of what he gets caught for is her death.
That's right.
But because that's what I mean, you assume briefly that Elizabeth dies, but it turns out not to be true.
Yeah.
But then it turns out that I guess the only other person that would have been with her, but like it's kind of odd that he didn't get rid of her body.
Well, they don't show very much of her death, like, because I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but Victor kind of hangs out in the room outside while he
Yeah.
hears the monster kill her and screams. So we don't know exactly what he did with her body. And yeah, now that you mention it, why didn't he dissolve her? I guess he didn't have the heart to, or maybe it'll grow.
Yeah.
We have
I
to
just
assume.
realized. I just realized this is a horrible idea. Maybe he kept the body because he was gonna, make a
Bring it
mate
back.
for the
Yeah.
monster.
Well, we have to assume that the Justine's body is not dissolved because that's essentially what he's on trial for, or what he's being accused of killing, and he's trying to say the monster did it. Because everyone else, there's no one else who's seen the monster. There's no other bodies that anyone knows about.
There's the old man. There's the old blind man.
But he has no connection to the old.
Yeah, but they're out in the woods.
Yeah, that's
not. The person that he kills, which is the worst thing that he does, is the guy he takes the brain from. That maybe he admits to. As you said, maybe unreliable narrator, but that's that's the craziest shit that he does, because he throws him off the damn stairs.
Look out, Mister! Look out, Dr. Frederick! Ah!
Yeah, and it's like. He also
and it's one of the best dummy stunts I've seen, because it looks like a guy, and you see the dummy fall, and you see it land right on his head.
Oh yeah, it's hardcore.
It must have been upsetting for 1950s viewers.
Well, I mean, it's upsetting too, because the guy's such a nice guy, and he's he's just so appreciative of him just letting him hang out there, and all of a sudden it's like throws him off the balcony.
Well, that was the whole point. He was supposed to be there because at that point in the story, like, they've got their body, they've got their hands. Like, that's another thing that's cool about all these Frankenstein movies that Hammer did, is this movie isn't so much concerned about the mayhem of the monster. It's almost always about the process of making a human being from bits and pieces. It's almost always, except for the one that he does soul transference with. I forget which Frankenstein one that was. But
I think that's the created the woman one, I believe.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. Yeah. But anyway, like this one, you see him get the eyes. You see him get the hands. You see him bribe the guy to get, a brain. But the brain has got to be perfect. It can't just be anybody's brain. It's got to be the brain of a genius. It has to be the brain of an altruistic good man, which is funny. Like, even though Frankenstein is a pure psychopath, he at least has an understanding of what goodness is. And clearly he's not it. But that's why he invites this genius scientist over, and they have this great little discussion about, the responsibility of the scientist to the world and whether pure research should be done, which I think is kind of funny. But I think in the context of the 50s and the atomic age, that whole scene was probably really, really important to people watching it at the time. Yes. It also gives Hazel Court something to do and talk to somebody else other than Victor.
Which talks to Paul too a lot. He comes in there and tells her to leave like 4 or 5 times.
It is very clear. It is very clear, I think, from reel one, that Paul is in love with Elizabeth, and he cannot have her, and it drives him crazy.
That's the whole reason he stays in the house, because if it wasn't for her, he would have left a lot earlier.
And while we're talking about how horrible Victor Frankenstein is, which, by the way, in before I forget, I want to give credit where credit is due, like how it was pointed out in there's this great content creator named James Rolfe, who's famous for the Angry Video Game Nerd videos. And he also does this thing called Cinemassacre's Monster Madness every October, and I cannot wait to see what he does this year. But that's kind of what introduced me to a lot of these the Hammer horrors, because he did like a marathon of them one year, and he pointed out that this was that Peter Cushing's portrayal of Frankenstein in this movie as this cold-hearted psychopath who'll do anything to make his monster clearly was the inspiration for Herbert West in Reanimator.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially like Jeffrey Combs's portrayal of him. But I will say, like, when I first saw this, I'm sure I first saw Peter Cushing like most American and British kids. Well, no, like most American kids, I'm sorry. I'm sure that I first saw him as Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars Episode 4. Where he's the only guy who can intimidate Darth Vader, apparently. But it's so weird. Even though he's very cold and calculating in that movie, I still kind of felt a little upset seeing him be such a bastard as Frankenstein. I don't know why. Because like most of the time I've seen him as either Van Helsing in the Dracula, Hammer Draculas, or he's the kindly, Valentine's loving guy in the Tales from the Crypt British version, or he's in his last movie that he ever did, where he's the old guy who mentors the modern day time traveler in Biggles' Adventures in Time. Yeah, I grew up with all that stuff, so that's the Peter Cushing. I thought he was this kindly old man, and also because in real life he was every bit that kindly old man. He was a great, by all accounts, nobody ever had anything bad to say about Peter Cushing. He was the sweetest, kindest, upstanding gentleman. But like to see him play this character and say the words he does, it's just like it's kind of upsetting. I don't know why.
It's always like, to me though, it's always been the opposite of that. I've always thought it was awesome because that's the range between, just like I've always like any actor who can play a villain and be, it's still like it's not even like truly a villain, but the different, he gets more villainous in some of these than others, but here he does several villainous things in this one, not as bad as like one of the later ones, but still I always thought it was like more of a, I don't know when I saw him doing this role, I was like just kind of blown away by the acting. So I wasn't like I wasn't expecting it, like you're saying, like I've seen him in other things where he was more low key or heroic, and it's just like a completely different take on something.
Well, I've mentioned before with me, I've seen him in a wide variety of different types of roles, so I never had a thing about him whether or not he was good or bad. I always saw him as like this great fucking actor. And the fact that I've read several books about him, and with Christopher Lee, I've always gotten the impression, or I've gotten the impression from other people, that he's like the nicest guy in the world, but he had such great chemistry with his co-stars in every movie he ever did, and he always brought 150% to every role. You remember him even if he does a bad film. He is the one you remember in that bad film for always giving 150%, so he would be better than everyone else because he cared. And that's not something you see in a lot of actors by any stretch. I mean, even Christopher Lee, as much as I like Christopher Lee, he's vocally said, "Yeah, I hated being in this movie. I just did it for the fucking paycheck."
Yeah.
But Vincent Price, you never ever get that type of performance from him in anything.
Yeah, Peter Cushing, or
Peter
probably
Cushing.
Vincent Price too.
Vincent Price. Oh shit!
Yeah.
Vincent Price, make no mistake, enjoyed everything on his journey. He absolutely loved horror movies. He relished being a bad guy and doing all the stuff.
Oh yeah, Peter Cushing. My bad. But Peter Cushing, yes. But that's how so that's why I've always gravitated towards him in the Hammer movies more so than any other actor, except for actresses, so to speak.
I think my two favorite line readings of his, I'm just gonna go through like real quick some like I think performance highlights of Peter Cushing in this, of Peter Cushing in this movie. Just in this movie, guys. That's how good he is. He has three like really shining moments, and like the earliest one I think is when Victor's getting super reckless with how he procures these parts.
Oh yeah,
and like he needs the brain. And then they're like, this is before he hatches the, like, I think hatches the plot to murder this guy, the poor old guy. Paul's like, how are you going to get such a fresh brain? How are you going to get such an unblemished brain? And that's another close up, one of the few ones, and it closes up to his face, and he has a pause, and he looks up, and he goes, "I'll get it."
Yeah, when that first happened, I thought he was going to fucking take Paul's brain. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
oh yeah, I thought he's dead.
Yeah, no. It's like, here it is.
I'll get it. The second like real star turn is later on when he finally does get that brain. And another thing that is pretty much in every Frankenstein movie where Frankenstein has to do some grave robbing, he goes in and not dig up because he's in a mausoleum, so he doesn't have to do very much digging. He goes in and opens the coffin of that old man that he killed, whose name I can't remember, but and cuts
Professor
open
Bernstein.
Bernstein, yes.
Yeah.
The only proper German scientist with an accent in this movie. But anyway, so he cuts open his skull, which you don't see. You just see the aftermath of it with him carrying his jelly brain and putting it in a murky liquid. We don't really see very much of the brain, but it's there.
The container looks almost too small too to have the brain in it. It seems a little thin.
Well, that's the thing about brains
Yeah.
that I found out is like
Yeah.
brains vary in size, contrary to popular
Yeah.
belief. Um side note and trivia, when Albert Einstein died, they wanted to see what his brain looked like. They wanted to see if his brain was different. This genius of all the world, surely his brain must be different than the average man. Well, they cut out Albert Einstein's skull and took out his brain, and turns out his brain was actually smaller than most average sized brains.
Yeah.
And also another thing that's funny about brains is that brains are not very solid in their natural state. The only reason why they look like firm, like they're firm shape that we think of in like a cartoon sense or something, is only because when what do you call it? People do autopsies, add some kind of chemical to harden the arteries and give it that spongy shape. If they didn't do that, if they just cut open your skull just as is, your brain is just like the consistency of a Jello mold. It's really just kind of sloshes around. So that's why you get so much head trauma if you're in a car accident, because your brain is sloshing around in your skull. But so yeah, that's kind of, so in a way, this movie is kind of a little bit scientifically accurate without meaning to be, in how it portrays brains in this thing. But like the turn that happens is like Paul comes down there and catches him red-handed, like, "How dare you? You're taking this poor man's brain!" And Peter Cushing looks at him and goes, "Well, what's the point? He's not going to need it anymore."
Yeah.
But then he follows it up with another great beat where they have a scuffle, him and Paul, and the jar gets broken.
Yeah.
But then Paul just gets fed up and just leaves. And like Peter Cushing, he's just like, it's the only time where we see Victor actually kind of have some real genuine emotion. Like he's crying over this brain. Like if you destroyed this brain, I'll never forgive you.
Yeah. He's mad about that for sure.
He's so mad. Yeah, he's so mad. He is crying like a boy whose like puppy got wounded. It's so affecting.
Yeah, but Frankenstein actually brings up the only reason why his monster is not correct in the brain is because Paul broke it the first time and then shot him in the face the second time.
Yeah.
And so this is all your fault, Paul. I those the words Frankenstein says to him. I wish I could remember them, but it was like, damn, Paul, this is your fault as much as it is Frankenstein. Frankenstein could have had a perfect creature if you had fucked it up.
But he went to like so much trouble to get that brain, and it's going to be really hard to get another one. So he was very upset about it. I mean, if you think about any time, like you're working on a project and like something, and you got so close to the end of it, and all of a sudden someone just comes in and smashes the most important thing. I mean, you'd be pretty upset. I'd say, for instance, if you're filming a movie and then you shot, and then somebody came in and took your master tape before you're able to edit it and just, when they were tapes, now they're discs, but they took that disc and just put a magnet up against it, destroyed your footage. It's like, can you imagine that?
Yes, thank you, Dave Watkins, for helping us empathize with the psychopath who murders people. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that, but he doesn't actually kill Paul because he knows he can kill Paul. He does have a gun. It's revealed later on, but I'm thinking like. I was thinking at certain points, I was thinking he would kill Paul, because especially if Paul at one point says, which the people always do this in films. They always come up and they're like, "I'm going to the cops. I'm going to go tell." And then he begs him not to go, and he tries to drag him. I think he's going to try to kill him, but luckily he doesn't do that. He just gets away. But in most films, I don't understand why people tell them they're going to the cops. Why don't they just go to the cops? And really,
exactly.
Paul could have gone to the cops like 100 times too.
Yeah, and something else that occurs to me, Watkins, I didn't realize this till I looked back at my notes, but like Frankenstein's so upset with Paul for breaking his precious brain.
Yeah.
But look at how he procured it in the first place. Like we said, he pushed this poor guy off the balcony of the stairs, and he landed straight on his head, which carries his brain.
Yeah.
This is like the worst possible way to procure someone's brain. You think if he'd thought through this enough, maybe if he'd actually gone to freaking medical school, he would have known that you should just like poison somebody, or maybe snuff them out.
That's a damn good point, because he lands on his head and it
He
looks like
lands
it crashes his skull open. You know,
He might as well have offered the old guy, Dr. Schmickenmeyer or whatever his name. He might as well have said, "Oh, here, have some cocaine."
yeah.
Oh, he dies of cocaine, gives him a stroke.
Yeah.
That'll damage the brain real good.
I didn't think about
Yeah.
that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he lands on
hilarious.
his head. That could have just fucked up the brain way before Paul ever did it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the point. Like, Frankenstein, through all of this, has only himself to blame, but he can never blame himself
No.
because he is a straight up narcissist who can only blame other people for his problems.
Yeah.
And that's a real, like, psychological truth that this movie does beautifully.
Well, not just this film, but all the films in regards to Frankenstein's character does that really. That's the one. I mean, that's the aspect of Frankenstein that's not really utilized or pushed upon in any of the other adaptations of the material. Which is what, in my opinion, sets this apart from so many of the other movies out there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of psychological layers to this particular version. And before we run out of time, folks, I think let's fast forward a little bit and talk about the other great big star of this movie, which is Christopher Lee as the monster.
We've said so little about Christopher Lee in this one because he doesn't show up for so long.
Yeah.
45 minutes, I counted. The monster does not show up in this movie, which is not even, it's barely an hour and a half long. So 45 minutes into this movie.
Well, you know, in the Universal Frankenstein film, when Frankenstein finally shows up, about halfway through, it kind of follows him for most of the rest of the movie, but not here. Here, he's still not in it that much. Once you see him, he's in it maybe 10 minutes, screen time from the first time you see him to the end of the film.
Yeah, and just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the creature at this point.
Yeah. But I'd say Frankenstein. Yeah. The creature in this film, in the Universal, it was called the monster, but here they call it the creature.
Yeah. Now, so this creature, we've what I think is interesting is when every Frankenstein movie also has to have the creation scene, and in this one, he's already had a falling out with Paul. Paul realizes what a psycho Frankenstein is, and it's like, I can't have any part of this. I'm out of here. So he's like, fine. So Frankenstein's like, fine, screw you, and decides to try to work the apparatus himself. And then he realizes he can't do it. It's a two-man job. So by now he's got the whole thing assembled in his tank of water. And then he's like, screw this, I can't do it. So he leaves the thing on, I guess, and then goes into the house because Paul is staying there again because he's got a thing for his fiance who he doesn't really care about. And he goes over to Paul and is like, I need you. I can't operate the machine by myself. I need you to do that. And I think we cut back to the lab, and I think this is the only time I've ever seen this in a Frankenstein movie that I can aware of, where the monster is not created by sheer force of will of the creator; it's just by accident.
Yeah.
Because the machine short circuits. It gets
and then it made it a lot simpler. The scene.
So the monster is getting shocked. And then it starts to move. And so then there's this great reveal when they hear the sounds from the lab. They go rushing in, and it's all wrapped up like The Mummy, which kind of foreshadows Christopher Lee's later career moves when he gets cast as the Mummy in the Hammer Mummy movie. But there he is. They open this door, and then bam, there's the monster. Now, and then all of a sudden, there's this really cool, probably the best camera move, most creative camera move in the entire thing. It's a long shot through the door. The monster is lit from below. He's all wrapped up, but then the camera dollies towards Lee's face, but they speed up the film for like a split second. So it's like a Sam Raimi kind of, and then he rips off his own face mask, and there he is in all his glory. And what do we think of this monster, guys? The design. He looks to me more like a zombie. He's got a big white eye. He's got scars all over his face that have no real rhyme or reason. I mean, he's got kind of the stitching across the forehead that's typical of a Frankenstein, but there's no bolts.
No.
There's no. I mean, he's green, so that's something. That's Frankenstein-y.
They couldn't copy the other. They couldn't use the other. I actually kind of like the design. It does look a little zombie-ish. I thought you can definitely still tell it's Christopher Lee, which I really
Oh
like
yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
But and then you got like a separation between the bottom of his head and his neck. His neck is very flesh tone, but his face is like dead skin on there or something.
Yeah, and his hands are like normal hands.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a makeup thing or more of a or they didn't want to make that part up, but there's a bit of a separation. But I think it looks pretty good. I think it's one of the better Frankenstein makeups.
Well, I think they get away with the hands thing simply because we established earlier that those hands were like pristine hands from a sculptor.
Yeah.
So I think they're supposed to look, different because Frankenstein. He's parts,
He's only a few parts. He's not like legs that were from different bodies or torso from a different body. He's hands, eyes, and a brain.
Yeah, I wonder where they even got the head from, because they don't even really talk about the head. They just take the other head off. I mean, a lot of this is just. I mean, clearly, like the science part of this isn't going to add up in real life, but it's just for that's fine though, because I mean, really, when they get too into trying to convince you about the science, it makes it really boring. At least they don't try to convince you that much about it. I mean, what's up with the beakers? They look cool, but what do those do?
There's really
there are beakers, levers, and buttons everywhere.
There's a little fan thing in the middle of the room too that looks crazy. Is that
so? Yeah, this look is very. I don't know. I actually kind of. I'm gonna make a confession to you guys. I watched this entire movie on my iPhone through Tubi. God bless Tubi. Oh no, not through Tubi. Through Plex. God bless Plex. And I think the makeup is a little more forgiving if you watch it on a smallish screen, because I've seen close-ups of this makeup, and there are times where the scar, especially on the cheeks, they look like they're just pasted on. There's definitely creases in the makeup, so that kind of made this one of my lesser Frankenstein designs for me in my particular canon. I mean, my personal favorites are still obviously the Karloff version and the version in Frankenstein Unbound. I've always liked Nick Bramble's monster that has like stitched together eyeballs. That thing is amazing.
Is cool. Yeah.
But yeah, like this one, like I said, it's more like a zombie. In fact, if you put this monster right next to a picture of, I think, a later Hammer movie called Plague of the Zombies, I think you'll see there's almost a 1-to-1. They look very similar.
Yeah.
But because of this space, which, mark my words, it's not my favorite, but it is scary. It is a frightening looking Frankenstein the first time you see him, and I will give this movie credit. This movie does have a better reveal of its monster than many other Frankensteins. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say the way they reveal the monster in this one is better than the way they did it in James Whale's original Frankenstein. I'm saying it right now. It's better. All they did in the original James Whale Frankenstein was the Frankenstein monster comes into frame, walking backwards. He slowly turns around, and then it's a jump cut right to his face, which scared the crap out of my son. But when he first saw it,
that's a cool jump cut. But no, I think it's a great shot, like you're talking about, just the way it goes in on him, and then he removes the mummy thing from in front of his face, and you see Christopher Lee's face for the first time. It goes into this close up.
Mm-hmm.
Then literally cool. The first thing the monster wants to do is to kill his creator.
Yeah. So that's another great aspect of this. It's not so much that the monster gets rejected by Frankenstein. The monster goes after Frankenstein first thing. Like we don't actually ever get any type of motivation on why the creature does what he does in this movie, which is very
yeah. That's one of the things I didn't really like about this version. I felt like there's no motivation for any of the deaths this monster creates. There's really no motivation for anything it does. It's just like it's just like a killing machine. And I think unlike other monsters, like even the Nick Bramble one, as unsympathetic as it ultimately is, there's still a tragedy to him. There's still some part of him that's human, and you can even get some funny lines. But this version, the Lee version, there's zero sympathy we have for this thing. I mean, you get a little bit of it towards the end where he's had some brain surgery, and he can actually walk and obey simple commands.
Yeah.
He's kind of pathetic in that one. You can kind of get a little bit of sympathy for him there, but most of the time he's just like,
he's killing
he's just Jason basically, except not as cool.
I mean, I feel it's almost like a dog that is just not, you can't control. Like, if you have a dog that's just going to go after anything that it sees, like territorial or not necessarily territorial, but I just feel like it's that sort of. If you see a dog that gets in that kind of like a bigger dog, if you see it do that, it is kind of, his brain's messed up. So he's just almost like a rabid person, and then he goes after whatever he goes after, he's just going to kill it. Like, it's just, that's how I kind of feel to it until he tries to fix it later, because he damaged the brain to begin with. It's probably mad as hell that it was woken up to begin with,
And now that you mention it, like before he gets out and goes on a rampage, my brain was trying to think, okay, why did he just try to kill him straight off the bat? And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, maybe he's doing that because the brain is the brain of Dr. Schwindenberger or whatever, and he remembers that Frankenstein killed him, and he's trying to get revenge.
There could be some of that there. I mean, it is his brain, but he does go after, and I assume that he kills the old man and the little kid, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, they never show any of that, which is the 1950s.
I know. But those I like the ambiguous, that it's ambiguous, but I do like those scenes when he's out in the woods and the fall leaves. It looks really cool when Frankenstein's walking around out there. Those exterior day scenes, even like the exterior night scenes in this, were shot at night, and they look really cool.
I would like to have seen a scene though that shows him getting his clothes.
Yeah.
Where do you get those clothes from, I wonder?
It was Frankenstein.
Where'd the creature get the clothes? Because he ran out. He's bandaged up like a mummy. Where did he get those clothes from? Did he kill somebody and steal their clothes?
I doubt it.
Took him on his way out.
Did he take him off the clothesline, kind of like the De Niro Frankenstein monster did?
De Niro Frankenstein, yeah.
I don't know if this monster would be capable of dressing himself, though.
Yeah. I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough too to find clothes that freaking big, because it's not like most people aren't as big as he is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Christopher Lee was like 6'4" or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, that's the question that we bring to ourselves. How did he get his clothes once he left the lab?
Speaking of Christopher Lee, I want to mention this beautiful, funny little anecdote before I forget about it, because we're talking about the two giants of Hammer here. I mean, there's really Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and I think Alfred Gough or Michael Gough is probably the third one who you can see as like this guy. Because those of you out there who may be unfamiliar with his work, he is most famous as playing Alfred in the 1989 Batman. But
really the three sequels too.
Oh yeah. So if you want to see what he looked like as a young man, watch these Hammer movies. Yeah. But so those three guys were pretty much the trinity of the cast of these Hammer movies. Herbert Lom kind of becomes a stalwart as well. We'll get to him later. But the chemistry these two guys had, like, I mean, they've starred together in like this movie, at least 3 Draculas, and one Mummy, and the Siberian Railroad one.
Horror Express.
Horror Express. Yeah. I think they did a Sherlock Holmes movie.
But
it was this movie.
Baskervilles.
Yeah, that's right. This movie was the start of their lifelong friendship. I read somewhere that Christopher Lee was very dissatisfied with the fact that he had 0 lines in this movie, and he came in and for whatever reason, he has no idea why, but he had the script in his hand. He hadn't gone to the makeup chair yet, and he bursts into Peter Cushing's dressing room just randomly and slams the script on his floor and says, "I haven't got any damn lines." And then Peter Cushing, who's making himself up, and turns around very calmly and turns to him and looks and says, "You're lucky I've read the script." And it says that Christopher Lee burst out laughing so hard that he says, "From that instance, I knew we would both be great friends." And they were throughout the years. In fact, there was one time where allegedly both Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing got thrown out of a movie theater in England for being a nuisance because they were laughing so hard at the Bugs Bunny cartoon before the movie that they were distracting everybody else in the theater.
Wow, yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, I read something about that too.
Okay.
Can you imagine kids kicking somebody out for laughing at a damn cartoon? It's like it's
Are you supposed to be laughing at a cartoon anyway?
I would give real money to be I would give like a limb to be able to get into a time machine and see what that was like and like to hear their laughter, because that must have been pure joy.
Yeah. But they don't have, like, I guess they have some scenes together. You don't quite see the chemistry in this film because of the dynamics between them, but I think Christopher Lee does a really good job as the creature. Even I like the makeup, but I think he's very imposing as the creature, pretty scary looking.
Yeah, I mean he does what he's asked to do. It's not very much, but he does do it very well. And then, like I said, in a surprising development, Dr. Frankenstein does try to fix this poor thing's brain after they've shot and killed it, which was really surprising to me. This like, because we're used to seeing the Frankenstein monster be this invincible undead Hulk, and then they go monster hunting, him and like Frankenstein and Paul with guns, and they go and shoot the guy in the face, and there's blood coming out of his hand, which is again 50s must have been upsetting, and he just boom dead, and they bury him, which must have taken hours, but Paul goes away thinking, oh, thank God that's over. And then Frankenstein hangs back like, oh, no, that's not over. And he digs up the monster. And implied, we see none of this.
Yeah.
All we see is later on, he's like, Paul, you got to come. So he comes and brings Paul to the basement and shows him, look, I fixed him. So he's got this whole shaved part of his head, the monster. And he's where you see the brain surgery done. And he's chained the poor thing to the wall. And he's just sitting there all like drooly. And Frankenstein's like, see, look, get up. And he struggles and gets up. And eventually, yes, he can get up and obey very simple commands.
Yeah.
But of course, Paul is not impressed. He's like, like while they're bickering, the creature is like, screw this. And he's like, or as they say in England, this is bollocks. And I'm out. So he yanks on that chain and gets off the restraints and goes off to the roof, and then that's where they chase him, and oh no, Hazel Court's gonna get killed by the monster, and that almost happens, but then Frankenstein gives him both barrels with a gun.
Well, he shoots her too.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought that happened, but apparently not. There's no gunshot wound.
I guess not, but it looked like she got shot.
Me too.
It shows her getting hit in the shoulder. But when they show her again at the very end, when they're at the jail, she doesn't seem to be harmed at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I noticed that too.
Granted, the jail scene we're to assume is months after, so maybe she recovered.
Trials in the 50s like that didn't last months. Like now, they say, "Oh, he killed that girl. Oh, let's put him on trial now so he can die tomorrow."
I got the feeling. I got the feeling that in the original script, he probably shot Elizabeth, and that's who he was on trial for.
Yeah,
because you're right. It would have made more sense that he would have disposed of Justine's body in the acid bath, unless my twisted theory is correct that he had other plans for her flesh, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. But
well, I mean, I mean, that's what it seems like. It makes the ending a little more pleasant that she survives, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's kind of weird that even if they did make that decision later, they should have at least had a wound or something, like where she got shot. But maybe they're just trying to act like she didn't get shot at all. I don't know.
I think they just liked Hazel Court too much. They just really adored Hazel. And this is also, we should probably note that in most of Hazel Court's most like her Italian stuff or her European movies, this is one of the few instances where she's not dubbed by another actress. This is her voice. This is all of her. But yeah, so the monster, like another trope that we associate with these Frankenstein movies is fire bad. We think fire is gonna upset the monster. Not in this version, because Dr. Frankenstein just throws a lantern at this thing, and bam, it's on fire, and the monster just keeps coming. It doesn't really affect him at all, but he does kind of stumble around and falls through the ceiling window, and bam! Spoilers, folks, into the acid bath. Straight perfectly into that acid bath, which I gotta say, it pays off the acid bath thing pretty nicely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then he's like, when he's talking to the priest in the prison, he thinks that if that monster was alive, that would save him. But that would probably make things even worse if there was like proof that he brought something back to life like that, and everything that he did would be like crimes against humanity almost.
Oh yeah, they would have burned him at the stake
Yeah.
instead of guillotining him. Which, by the way, I'm pretty sure is a little historically inaccurate because I think the guillotine was not invented until the late 1800s. This movie is probably taking place in the late early 1800s. But yeah, who's counting?
Right.
Oh, by the way, fun fact about the guillotine: Christopher Lee was one of the people who was there to witness the last execution by guillotine in France before they retired it.
I think I remember reading that somewhere too.
Yeah, so kind of cool. So that ending, folks, like we were talking about earlier, this movie's got a lot of psychological layers to it, and I think this is one of the more unique takes on Frankenstein because of the way it ends, because it makes you think that maybe he's insane, and this whole movie, this whole thing about him making a creature, maybe that was all in his head. Maybe he actually killed all those people. Like the police said, maybe Frankenstein killed Justine. Maybe he killed the old blind guy. And Paul just walks off with Hazel Court, and he's like, there's nothing we're going to do for him now. Because he says nothing. Like, Paul comes in and as like, just to see Frankenstein. I don't know what he expected to say to him or anything, but he just shows up. And he's like, Paul, you've got to tell them we made the creature. You got to say, and he tells them nothing. We don't know if he's keeping secrets or if Paul is just looking at him like, no, we never made a monster. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like, maybe because like the only two people in the entire movie who aren't killed by the monster, in theory, Paul's the only one who saw it. Mm-hmm. I mean, Hazel Court kind of saw it, I guess, but she's a woman. Her testimony is not admissible in court in those day and ages.
She never saw the monster. In that scene on the rooftop, the monster's behind her. Frankenstein shoots without telling her why he's shooting, which is why it shows her getting shot, her falling into the monster's arms, and then him shooting the monster.
My point is, you could look at this, the way that they've set this up, you could interpret everything you just saw as just the ravings of a narcissistic madman who has dissociated himself and has created a monster in his mind. That this is really a story of cognitive dissonance, where Frankenstein is a character who never really accepts responsibility for anything. He just keeps telling Paul that the monster is deranged because Paul damaged the brain. It's all your fault. He tells him at least on 2 separate occasions that. And in the end, he blames the monster for all the killings. But in the end, he built the monster, if it exists anyway. So he is responsible. But he just can't bring himself to admit it. So in the end, it's like the Frankenstein monster is a monster that he created, and he created himself.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of leaves it open-ended. Obviously, we got a sequel that disproves that.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me ask you this. Let's pretend for a second. Let's pretend that this movie was not successful. Let's pretend there were no other Hammer Frankensteins that were sequels to this. Let's pretend.
Okay.
Just based on the information you get from this movie, do you think it's more possible, given the information, that he actually built a monster or that he is hallucinating that whole thing?
Well, if we were given the information that really the only thing we know for a fact is the first scene and the last scene actually happened. Yeah. But the at the same time, if Paul, there would be no Paul telling them anything is not going to help anything anyway.
I think did he show up though?
Yeah, I agree. That why does he come in there other than antagonize him or whatever? But I don't. I don't know what, that part, some things just don't make sense like that. It's just for the plot or whatever. But I mean, it is something that could be. I don't think that was the intentions of the filmmakers, but I think
Oh no, I think it was. I think they did intend for it to be that ambiguous, but of course the movie was a hit, so then they had to,
make a sequel.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and they had to like come on one side. It's kind of like I think it's kind of like freaking Ridley Scott when he did Blade Runner, when they did the original
Oh
director's
yeah,
cut
yeah.
of Blade Runner, where they leave it ambiguous at the end whether or not Decker is a replicant. Now, granted, I have not seen Blade Runner 2049 yet. I know I'm super late to that party, but I've got a busy life, guys.
It's still left ambiguous. You
It's
still
still
don't know.
ambiguous.
Yeah,
They never
yeah.
actually say.
No.
Okay, well, okay.
Yeah.
So through my example, forget it. Okay,
No,
but
I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, it's possible, but I just don't think that he would. If the story were true, I don't see why. Why would he come in there otherwise? For the other reason. But I don't. If it were true, there would be no reason for him to come in there and confess and then get his ass like hung too or guillotined. So that's what would be because he was involved with all that. He was an accomplice.
Well, I think the number one thing you have to take with this film is that what we're seeing in the audience is not what he's telling the priest, because he's telling the priest stuff that he wouldn't know. Any scene,
Yeah.
any scenes with between Elizabeth and Paul, he would never know
Yeah.
because he wasn't there.
I wonder.
that's
I
Paul
wonder. I
Hogan.
wonder if it was like something that was added, like the opening and the ending, like after the fact.
Could have been.
Because it's like, yeah, because you're right. It does have that does kind of prove that whatever we're seeing on screen is not what he's really telling him. Because he's never in there. And Paul's constantly going in there and telling her she needs to get out of there.
Yeah,
And
yeah. There's lots of
Really,
scenes with
yeah,
Paul and Elizabeth, uh,
yeah,
and he'd have to be making it up because number one, he rarely ever listens to anything that Elizabeth says. So even if Elizabeth tells him, "I had the conversation with Paul about blah blah blah," he was like, "Whatever, woman," and he would forget it. Uh, that is if she told him. But I kind of always saw this film like that. I was like, as I got, and I didn't see this when it came out because I wasn't even born, and I didn't see it for probably saw this one probably maybe 10 years ago. So that being said, I had a whole bunch of films I'd seen way before this one, and I always saw him as an unreliable storyteller because there are scenes in the movie that he could not
yeah.
possibly know. And that's and we see that a lot now. We see that a lot now, but back then, I guarantee you that people weren't thinking about that in the 50s, having unreliable witnesses like that. They're
I mean,
probably following
well,
the.
I mean, books like that did exist. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I mean, like my favorite example, of course, is like Clockwork, Anthony Burgess's Clockwork Orange, where like that's part of the reason why that book was banned in many places. Is like that book is strictly from Alex's point of view. So the Alex that emerges in the way he describes himself is, of course, a hapless victim and a of circumstance, and he's not responsible for any of the horrors and atrocities that he describes in loving detail. And of course, another bigger example of this is Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, where you have a truly unreliable narrator, Hubert Humford, who he paints the story of him and this pedophilic relationship he has as
Yeah.
this tragic love story, and of course he's the victim of circumstance. So of course that's part of the reason why that book doesn't really work as a movie. But yeah,
The
so
movie's pretty good though.
I like
Was
both.
it?
I like
Yeah,
both versions of that
yeah,
movie, and I've read the book.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, I
So that
well,
one, first one has Peter Sellers in it as a
yeah.
doctor. It was, yeah,
Well, it's also Stanley
yeah,
Kubrick is fucking
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The second one
James
has
James
Jeremy
Mason. Yeah,
Irons.
yeah, yeah.
Has
I saw
Jeremy
I saw I
Irons.
saw that one too. I
Yeah,
like the first one a lot better though, but
yeah,
they're both pretty good.
yeah.
But
yeah.
it is the main character is a pedophile he's in in that relationship with a young girl.
Yeah, but the thing about unreliable narrators is more prevalent now than it was back in the 50s. Right now, you could think of Memento, Fight Club, High Tension. Like it's a normal thing now. Like having an unreliable narrator
But it's
is
so
normal.
yeah.
But
Some of these horror movies were done like this, in a way that where in the beginning you're basically in a bad situation. Even before this, some of the Universal ones that you're in a bad situation and they tell the story and then it comes back out at the end, like it does here.
I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I think like, I'm thinking about like all the people that the monster kills allegedly. The only instance that doesn't make any sense, if Frankenstein is in fact the monster, like he really did, like literally, like he really did kill those people, and the monster is just his dissociation, is like when he tries to kill Elizabeth. I think it's pretty. It's kind of. I mean, unless you're doing like like a high tension sort of situation where like it makes zero sense in retrospect that she is the killer. Spoiler for that movie, by the way. But yeah, other than that, like I can easily see it to where like, I mean, there's no instance where again a crowd of I just realized this is the one Frankenstein movie where there are no crowds of villagers to try to kill the monster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a budget reason.
Yeah.
I was watching some behind the scenes stuff, and they said that there's actually make a comment. He goes, "I'm going to go get the villagers." I'm going to call the villagers. Like, right,
Yeah.
you can say all you want to say about getting the villagers in the script, but you can't have any villagers show up with torches because we don't have the budget for it. So
that's crazy. Yeah,
but it actually works pretty good because there's twice when at one point Peter Cushing's character Frankenstein tells him he called the village, and then the second time at the end, the other guy goes to actually go get the villagers, but it doesn't get that far into it because it's over before the villagers get there.
yeah.
Yes,
Pretty
good writing on just writing around it without you thinking about it.
The ideal villagers that may come against the monster, but we don't actually see it. But we know that the concept is still there in their brain.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much effort it would take to get them that riled up and show up with torches and shit like that quick?
And you have like very little evidence. You're just some dude who just shows up. I mean, at least in the original Frankenstein, the James Whale, they had the guy's father, the poor kid's father, show up with the kid's corpse and say, "A monster did this to my daughter. Let's go storm the Frankenstein estate because clearly A equals B equals dead daughter." But we gotta do something about this Frankenstein. But yeah, no, in this version, he would have just been seen as like a crazy person.
Because we don't even know if the villagers have ever even seen the blind hermit's body or the other kid if the kid was killed.
So that's why I think that there was some specific choices made in, I think maybe either Terrence Fisher or Jimmy Sangster were using their budgetary restraints to add a layer of ambiguity to their story that wouldn't have been there otherwise, to make us doubt that maybe this is one of the few Frankenstein stories where maybe the central event, the one thing we associate with the story of Frankenstein, doesn't actually happen anywhere except in his diseased brain. Which, by the way, leads me, I just remembered, I thought of a much more like thick, ironic ending to this movie that they kind of sort of almost do, I think, in the second movie or the third one, but don't quite commit to, which is, wouldn't it have been interesting if they did to Frankenstein at the end, kind of sort of like what happens, again, spoilers for another movie no one's seen, if they kind of did what happens at the end of Brain Dead, the one with Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton, where they kill Frankenstein and he gets hanged, but then someone takes his body down and cuts out his brain and puts it in a jar. And it's going to be used for experimentation. Okay. Or maybe we instead of the prison scene thing, we find out, like, we pan out and then find out that this whole movie is the hallucination of Frankenstein's brain in a jar.
Yeah, but luckily they ended it the way that they did, or we wouldn't have Peter Cushing back,
Well, actually, that's the thing. Like, they do kind of show him going to the guillotine, but they don't show it's a cool shot because it's just the camera looks outside his window and sees the guillotine up there against the red sky, and the credits roll over that. Yeah. But I kind of wish, it would have been so satisfying to me as a viewer that as soon as the credits finish rolling and off the screen, I wish we had seen the guillotine blade go down.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought that was the way it ended. Like until I watched it this time. For some, I could have sworn like last time I saw it, it actually came down.
But it
I feel,
didn't.
yeah, I know, no, I know it did, and I saw it like a couple days ago. But
Yeah.
I feel like there's another. I feel like maybe it happens again in another movie, like at the end of one of these other movies. Like it does come down, and then the next one, it gets. I feel like that does happen, but I'm not positive.
You think like in the sequel they may with it like that?
I think it's in Frankenstein Created Woman. The guillotine goes down, and you see it slowly come up, and there's blood dripping from it.
Yeah, at the end of the movie, like he really died that time, and then the next one, of course, he didn't. So, but
yeah,
I can't. You see, remember what I tell you guys? I watch these completely out of order.
Yeah.
So watching them for the podcast is going to be very therapeutic.
Yeah.
I will actually get to watch them the way they were intended to be watched.
Yeah.
But Kevin's got to make time for these out of his busy schedule of finishing the epic that is Knight Rider.
Oh, God, you keep bringing that up.
Are you freaking done with Knight Rider yet, Matt? Kevin?
Get up to the side, dude.
Talking about Knight Rider, like the car show?
Yeah, the car show.
Yeah.
He was watching every single episode.
I'm on season 2. Don't be knocking me. I'm on season 2.
Season 2, you got a long way to go, buddy.
It's only 5, I believe.
Really?
But they had like so many. They had so
5?
many episodes per season. Was there like 20 or 30 episodes a season?
I was about to say, I thought that show went on for like ever. I thought that thing was on till like the early 90s.
No, they only did they have spin-offs. There's like 3 or 4 of the spin-offs from Knight Rider.
Yeah.
Well, there's also like that TV movie they did that I do remember seeing, which was like Knight Rider 2000 or something.
Yeah.
I feel like he was on Scooby-Doo one time too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Everybody showed up in Scooby-Doo. I wouldn't be surprised if Peter Cushing showed up in Scooby-Doo.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Yeah. He shows up in
great.
One of his last movies was Top Secret. He has a cameo in that.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
He got like a big eye. He's got like a magnifying glass in front of it, and then he moves it, and the eye's as big as it really was. It's pretty.
Which I'm sure Peter Cushing will probably like. This isn't the most unusual prosthetic I've ever worn.
All right, guys. So as we are winding down, are there any other thoughts or opinions or things that we need to discuss about the Curse of Frankenstein?
Well, I promise you, Kevin, that with successive, as this brave new podcast emerges, I'm sure we will find our own separate identity from the main feed show, and I will definitely come up with more Hammer-ish and British-sounding bits to fill out this show. I had a few ideas, but I just couldn't follow through with them. I do have an idea for one bit that I'm sure we will do when we do Dracula Prince of Darkness.
Okay.
Wherein we will try to give poor Christopher Lee some lines. But I do think we should carry over one thing from Conversations in Horror, wherein we find an object from this movie that we choose to rate this movie. Because I feel like we still should rate the movies.
Oh, yeah.
And also I have a famous quote that I think we can end the show with. So I think I'll start off with my rating for this movie.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's see. What object do I pick that defines this movie? My goodness, there's so many parts. There's so many parts just lying around. Oh, man, the acid bath is so important. But that thing is so big and so cumbersome. I don't want to move it. So I think I'm gonna take it slow this first time around for me, and I'm just gonna say 4 jelly brains in jars out of 5, because let's face it, this movie is defined by a particular brain in a particular jar that goes very wrong. But yeah, 4 out of 5. It's great. It's not a masterpiece, but it's definitely well worth your time, folks. Like Kevin said earlier, even if you don't like older, horror. I mean, I do think that like some people who may not have that much of an appreciation for the Universal monsters because of they're so old and cheesy, or I don't like black and white movies. Well, give these movies a try, because yes, they are still old, and yes, they might be a little cheesy, but dadgummit, they're in color. Dadgummit, like I said, blood, sometimes breasts, but definitely a lot of beasts and great performances by great British actors in parts that may be very upsetting to some people.
All right, Dave, where were you going to rate this?
So I guess I'll pick a beaker, like a red colored beaker, and I'll give it 4 as well. It's one of the better. It's one of the first Hammer films, one of the better ones too, I think. But it does have its flaws, but I do like the film pretty good bit for rating it 4 stars. So.
All right, so I'm gonna go a little bit crazier with this. We just guys went so normal. I'm gonna give it 4 too, but I'm gonna give it 4 trips to the back hallway with Justine.
Oh my God, Kevin!
Yeah, I knew you liked the gothic romance part of the whole thing, man. Those are good scenes though, man.
You're gonna give it 4 fully clothed makeout scenes with Peter Cushing, who always looked, even when he was young, like a skeletal old man. I guess that's one thing I found a little upsetting. I've never bought him as a romantic leading man. It was always a little disturbing.
That is one thing though I was going to mention though during that earlier scene when he's got the young Frankenstein and then Paul comes in there with no beard and Paul looks older with no beard. And then when it cuts to like, I guess it's maybe like supposed to be 10 years later, and Peter Cushing looks like he's 40 all of a sudden. And Paul looks he's like 10 years younger than Peter Cushing, the actor.
Yeah, that's just it. He's just one of those guys who was just like born an old man.
Yeah.
It's like a wizard from like Middle Earth, like Gandalf.
I mean, yeah, I like seeing them. I like seeing them getting it on with the maid though. That was, I mean, not the maid, housekeeper, whatever she was. But I did like, I like seeing that. I did like seeing that aspect of it all of a sudden because he's not really into his cousin. Yeah. He likes the maid better, but he can't marry the maid. He wants to keep her on as a side chick, but she wants to be married, so it becomes a problem.
Yeah,
what a bastard.
Yeah, what a bastard. So I want to thank you two for joining us on this conversation about the Curse of Frankenstein. For all of you out there listening to the program, I hope you've enjoyed this first of many episodes that will take place over the course of the entire franchise of the Frankenstein films through the lens of Hammer Studio. We hope you enjoyed this, and please make sure to check out all of our previous episodes that come out, and make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast on your favorite podcast app, Spotify or YouTube, so you never miss an episode. For this podcast, it is every first and third Friday of the month. So we are only doing this every other week, unlike our regular podcast, which is every week. And that regular podcast is Conversations in Horror. So please check those both out. And I have one final thing for you from our guest, Thomas here. What do you want to say, Thomas?
Well, I'd like to end tonight's podcast with, like I said, a famous quote. This time, I think it's very appropriate that we end with a quote from Mary Shelley. "No man chooses evil because it is evil. He only mistakes it for happiness, the good he seeks."
Thank you, Thomas. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us on Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors. Have a pleasant day, and we will see you on the next episode. Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures and Something Wicked Entertainment podcast. It is hosted by Kevin L. Powers, original music provided by Dusty Ellison, produced and directed by Kevin L. Powers. Our executive producer is Kelly A. Inoka. This podcast is produced in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors is part of the Conversations in Horror podcast franchise and is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures. No part of this program can be used without express permission from Broken Lighthouse Pictures.